Hello everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Speak No Evil. This was directed by James Watkins. This is a remake of a Danish film with the same title, and that came out several years ago. I have not seen that film, so I cannot compare the two, but as I was watching this film, it's like you can definitely sense kind of like a, European sensibility, or at least like a European influence. It's a slow burn, claustrophobic, psychological thriller that sure, you could compare to something like Funny Games, the examination of upper class formalities and social expectations, and suddenly being ripped of that civility, and it's kind of a social experiment. But I think what struck me about the American version is that, yeah, it's like you can sense there's a watered down quality to it. Maybe it doesn't have the same grit, the gall to push maybe to the darker places that it needs to here. And I think it's a little bit lost so far as how much of the darker aspects, the darker themes in the movie it really wants to emphasize at the end of the day. But I liked this film. I did. I think it's solid because it has a grasp on, I think, what makes the story click overall. I think this film is less about the jump scares, the shock value. It's more about the character study, because I think this is a movie, it's a portrait of a family in crisis. Specifically, the story here is we have a married couple, and they're played by Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis. I'd say they're a very typical American upper class family. I mean, the wife, her entire wardrobe seems to consist of mainly Reformation and anthropology. They have a 12-year-old daughter. They seem like perfectly fine parents, responsible. They just seem maybe a little bit out of touch with each other. Maybe they have lost the spark over the years, whether it's due to, job issues, job transitions, financial issues, of course, having a kid. That can cause the mood to fizzle in romance for a bit. And so all of those things are contributing. But they're all on this nice vacation in Italy, and while they are there, they meet this other British couple, and they're around the same age, and they are played by James McAvoy and Ashlyn Franciosi. They have a son who seems mute or something. There's something off about him, but we're not quite sure what it is. But these two couples hit it off during this vacation, and Scoot's character is quite drawn to the openness and the bohemian looseness of the family. They seem to have this inherent freedom and joy, and he seems to really wish that he had that in his own marriage and his own family. In particular, he seems drawn to James McAvoy just because he has a very masculine outlook, and he's very kind of dominant as a father and as a husband, and he has a charisma to him, where Scoot as Ben is a cuck, essentially. He's a boring, out of touch family man who is maybe losing control of the life he built, at least the joy that comes along with it. But McAvoy likes the family so much that he invites them to his home, which is kind of on this farmland. It's very remote. It's out kind of in the woods, minimal cell phone service. It's meant to be a lovely getaway. It is a premise where you have a strong sense of where it is all going to lead. The key for this movie is the casting, because so much of the tension, the weight of everything relies on the believability of these budding relationships here. The paranoia, the potential for manipulation that we're sensing here, the passive-aggressive behavior that is constant throughout. The movie always wants you to know that there is something rough and bitter and acidic that is beneath all the frothy conversations. James McAvoy, as an example, I think is very well cast here. Partially because I think he's the type of actor who isn't afraid to throw himself into roles, and he commits to a visceral level of performance that I've always appreciated. I've never thought he really gave a performance that was, Academy Awards worthy or anything like that, but, there is a fortitude in his performance style that I think it allows him to be very versatile. We need to be drawn to his charm instantly. We have to like him, because the red flags start almost instantly. It's we know there's something off about him. But McAvoy, yes, obviously he has star quality. There is a likability to him, and he is funny. It is that boyish handsomeness that he has just inherently, combined with, yes, more of that grit, that fortitude that I mentioned, where he's not afraid to go to maybe the darker, more painful sides of his characters. But it's also an interesting casting choice, because I don't think I would have ever thought of it. When you think about James McAvoy, you don't instantly think masculine type, or somebody that is known for their physical prowess. He was maybe a little bit shorter, I think, for a guy, but I think he's middle-aged now, and he's kind of rocking the gray hair, and I love to see that. But, he's filled out. He's bulked up. He looks more like a man, and he understands that physicality here is so important to the character, so he really emphasized that. And there is kind of, with that comes kind of a sexiness, but also, yes, an intimidation that I wasn't expecting. But also there's a childlike lack of control and frenzy in his eyes. I really liked his wife in the movie, Ashlyn Franciosi. just because she had kind of also a childlike quality to her, but a doll-like quality to her that is quite haunting. And yes, she has this bohemian quality just like he does, but where it feels almost like she's in denial. Of course, she is in denial, but I just mean that, you know, there is a sadness in her always, but she doesn't play it on the surface. So I really like that. I think she knows, because James McAvoy is such the central focus of tension, and he's such a physical presence in the movie, that, you know, she's trying to keep it more subtle. She's keeping a lot of those pieces of her character, you know, more close to the chest, so later it can be set in motion. I also really loved Mackenzie Davis in the film. She may have been actually my favorite performance, just because I think she centers the film really well, and she, you know, is a source of unlikely strength in it. For me, her character's self-actualization was maybe the most gratifying and the most palpable, and, you know, like Franciosi, I think they're both playing it very real. I love her performance in the third act of the film, as an example. Now, I did not like the third act of the film really at all. It felt just like your standard cat and mouse chase, and it was really boring by that point, but I loved her performance because she stays so flustered constantly. She plays it as if she's completely out of her element. She has no idea what she's doing, but because she's a mother, she's going to do whatever she has to, obviously, to protect her baby. She plays that immediacy, I think, just right. She gets the tone perfect. And, you know, I love that she never looks cool. She never looks like that badass mom. You know, she looks like, yes, a mother that is completely in survival mode. It's stuff like that that saves parts of the movie that feel maybe mediocre. And I remain emotionally invested in the characters because of it. And just naturally, I love this kind of film. I love kind of that quiet building tension between characters, especially where like hospitality is slowly unraveling. That kind of tension is fantastic often, you know, when it's done well, and I think they do a pretty good job of maintaining that mood overall for a while. But I will say, once we get to maybe the halfway point of the movie, maybe a little bit beyond it, I feel like we've run out of ways to dig into the psychology of these characters, mainly because so much of the tension, so much of the big reveal, it's quite telegraphed. It's like we know what's going on with the James McAvoy character quite blatantly from the beginning, but rather than finding new avenues and like new nuggets, you know, within his character to explore, you know, that psychology, I feel like it starts to get redundant. And then, you know, we get to the final act where we've kind of sucked dry all of the things that I felt were interesting about this movie, you know, just for, again, the standard thriller fare. I would have liked to see a lot more scenes, as an example, maybe like between the two wives, because you have two women that have completely different perspectives as wives and as mothers, but they don't know about each other's situations. And so it's like, how does that work its way into the discussion? But I also really enjoy the stuff, especially between the two husbands, because that is a very complicated dynamic. How both characters are so smitten with each other, and how Scoot clearly, you know, it's like, is he in love with him, or does he want to be him? I see James McAvoy as an interesting archetype, and, you know, he's kind of that funhouse mirror in the cinematic sense, where yes, the family has to stare into it and reckon with it in order to self-actualize. He is the wrench that is going to be thrown into the natural order of things, where yes, the characters suddenly realize what is important to them. There's something almost delicious about this, but at the same time, it's also too standard, I think, to stand out as something special. The direction, as an example, something about it felt off to me. It felt a little bit too expensive, too clean and flashy. Very Americanized, obviously, but I don't think it needs all of that, like the big sweeping camera shots and all of that. I think the more kind of intimate and stripped down you can make it, the more eerie it becomes. And also just claustrophobic. It definitely feels claustrophobic as it stands, but yes, again, there's something just a little bit too sparkly about everything. It's not brutal enough. It's not painful enough, because at the end of the film, you know, I think we're left with some pretty meaty themes and some dark themes that deal with, yeah, childhood trauma and loss of innocence, but it all feels too half-baked, and I don't think it quite knows the right tone to strike in the end of it, between, yes, the entertainment, but also the vulnerability here. Again, I haven't seen the original, so I don't know the style of that particular one, but based on this one, it just doesn't seem that original, so I'm trying to understand what the point is of making a remake. You know, how is it setting itself apart? I am going to recommend this film. I wouldn't pay full price for it, but I think this is absolutely a great movie to watch, like for a stream one night. Like I said, I was really into this thing for maybe the first half of it, and I think if you're the type of person where, yeah, you enjoy that slow burn tension, you might get something out of this. Just don't expect it to knock your socks off. But yeah, that is my 2 cents. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below, and if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, or you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.